Hello. India has always been a center of excellence. From the ancient centers of learning such as Nalanda and Takshila among others to the modern marvel of Mangalyaan, India has always shown the world the rich stock of its homegrown knowledge. However, in recent years we have seen a dwindling of this inquisitive nature of ours. India has not seen much of research from its educational institutions. Neither has it seen much spent in research and development. Today we are here to discuss on these topics and find a way forward. Today we have with us Suman Kumar Sinha, Prasanti Panda, Siddharth Naik, Meghana Thakur and Prasam Benara. Suman, we'd like to know from you, what will be the role of the private sector towards the growth of research and development in India?
Talking about the private players, what bigger role they can play in making R&D a big success for India. First thing that government need to focus on is the incentivizing them. Whatever kind of R&D they are taking on, government need to put lots of fund into that, so that private player can put in lots of effort. Second thing is that private players already have been investing lots of money in CSR activities, and government have been providing tax support when it comes to CSR activities. Thing is that CSR activity is not directly goes into R&D work. Government will need to widen the R&D infrastructure work and correlate it to CSR activity that private player usually takes on. Third could be the major role that government could do is to partnership with private players, where they could partner in terms of funding 50-50, or in terms of work, where public as well as private sector company, both employee from both the sectors are coming together and working for some of the social issues like medicine, pharmaceutical, automobile, software, which could help day-to-day requirement of the human being. In that sense, they could ease out the things. The last and most important thing that could be India being a federal state, what is required that we have localized problem for every state, for every district, for every village. So private player could partner with the state government for different localized issue, and their funding could be put on so that research is directed for the localized issue and solution could be
Another thing I'd like to know from you, Suman, is that can you please elaborate on the government expenditure on research and development in India, and would you please compare it with the spendings by research and development by other nations?
Talking about government expenditure in R&D, in 2004 the government expenditure was something around 24,000 crore. That moved to 85,000 crore in 2014, and by 2016 it moved to 104,000 crore. But problem doesn't lie with this figure. It lies with the percentage contribution to GDP. The figure is below 1%. So there is hardly any money to invest in R&D. When you compare the size of Indian population or the size of Indian land, the contribution is quite small. Again, the problem lies when you compare with the some of the developing nation or developed nation. The US contribute 2.8% of their GDP. Country like Korea contributes 4.8. So when you compare with their contribution of GDP to R&D with ours, so you will find quite less is being invested in R&D. And whatever being invested in R&D is especially into science, some of the fields like atomics, so science and technology, again it could be space, earth science. So there is not much investment into day-to-day life problem when it comes to investment in R&D, research and development work of the government. In foreign country, usually you find that government only plays the role of funding. Most of the R&D, research and development work is usually taken by the private players. Government has only role of funding them. In India, maximum R&D work is being taken by the public firms. So private role when it comes to expenditure is kind of negligible when you compare with the foreign country. So expenditure has been quite less when compared to the
So Siddharth, I'd like to know your views. about the contribution made by universities and the private sector towards research and development in India so far?
So first of all, I would like to start with some numbers. In the past 3 years, the expenditure on R&D by our government India, it has grown from 86,000 crores to more than 1 lakh. But when we come to see the percentage of GDP that R&D takes, it's not even more than 1%. To be precise, it's 0.6%. But when we compare it with other countries like Israel, Korea, Japan, America, the expenditure on R&D from the country's GDP, it ranges from more than 2 to 4% actually. So it actually tells a lot about us that we really need to focus on. And because we are not focusing much on R&D, we are not being able to come up with better products, cutting edge technologies for which the manufacturing of different softwares and hardwares, different products in general is being halted. So I feel at this point of time the private sectors and different institutions need to step up actually, because the numbers don't lie, and in India the contribution of private sectors in the field of R&D, it's just about 50%, whereas in other countries it's more than 60 to somewhere around 90% of the total innovations in the field of R&D. So I personally feel that various institutions, the government and the private in general, they need to step up and invest their time, money and their efforts to do something new and pump in money to come up with new technology so that the society would be able to reap the fruits as a whole.
Also, Siddharth, how important are patents when it comes to giving a boost to the research culture in India?
To understand what can be done to improve the R&D condition in India, we first need to understand the structure of how the patents are being registered in India. First, we need to see what are the number of patents that are registered in our country, how much time does it take in our country to get a patent registered, and what is the scenario in other countries like in the western countries and countries like Japan, Korea, Israel, different developing and developed countries. So when it comes to India, the number of patents that are being registered is in thousands actually. It is somewhere around 45 to 50,000. But in case of countries like Japan and America, for example, in Japan, it was somewhere in US, it was actually somewhere around 5 lakhs. And in China, it was somewhere around 11 lakhs. So we can see a huge difference of the ease of getting a patent registered. So the next question comes, what is the issue? Why people are not being able to get their products patented that easily? That is maybe because in India, the number of technicians, they are very few. And the process of getting a product patented is very tough in India, and it is not very simple. So we really need to figure out ways in which we can streamline a process and people can get their products and services patented in the least possible times, because in the past we have really seen that people go to different countries, most preferably US, because it hardly takes 3 to 4 months to get a patent registered. So I feel that government has taken a lot of initiatives to shorten the process of getting a product patented, and I really welcome the steps.
What can be done to bridge the gap between universities and research institutions in terms of the volume and the quality of research done in these institutions?
Right now we need to gap the bridge right from the top. we've got separate ministries for science, research, development, and separate ministry for education. On the one hand, we have got ministries for science, atomic energy, and others, and on the other hand, we've got ministry for human resource development. What is to be done is that an organic partnership between these two ministries should be envisaged. What is another thing that is being planned is that a single higher education regulation agency be planned, which replaces AICTE and UGC. Now, when this single higher education empowerment regulatory agency will be formed, this will eliminate any overlaps in jurisdiction and remove any irrelevant regulatory provisions, if at all. This will prove to be very beneficial, but this will only give an initial impetus. What is required is, between the research institutes and the universities, a specific partnership in scope of geographic area and spatial areas be made in such a way that there is an organic partnership between these two institutions, without which the universities and institutes will lack one or the other thing. Now, what can also be done is that as we all know that institutes of national importance like IITs, NITs and other institutes have got their own research and development wing. So they've got their own R&D scope altogether. But this R&D scope is completely different from the research institutes in India. So what can be done is, the input for these research institutes should be planned in such a way that the coursework of these institutes of national importance is directly mandated by these research institutes. So, and why is this very important is because a gap between research and teaching is going to be proved and actually is healed for research and science in India.
My next question to you, Prasam, is that what are the steps taken by the government to ease the patent filing process?
As Siddharth has already spoken about the importance of patent and patent filing process for industries in India, the government also realizes its importance. Now, we've all heard about the ease of doing business in India. Government is coming up with provisions which will prove to be ease of filing patents in India. Like, for example, the first provision that the Federal Ministry of Industry and Commerce is coming up with is the fast track application of patents and fast track approval of patents. Now, we all know that in India, patent filing process is a tedious task of 3 to 5 years. But recently, a headline in the news flash was that an industry or a company got patent filed within a span of 113 days. This was a big news for industry that wants to come to India. Now, why is this a big news? Because India is inherently as we all know, that the processes are a little slow. But the government realizes that it needs to fast track these processes so that it attracts FDI in India and attracts and gives some lucrative offers to startups that come to India. Now, what the provision that they have done is, they've also approved 450 patent examiners. Now, what this means is, the patent office right now, the Indian Patent Office, has got around 2 lakh patent filing provisions, patent filing that are still pending. Now, these 450 extra patent examiners will expedite this process by 4-fold, because right now only 100 were sanctioned. So now this proves that Indian government right now has taken good provisions to fast track the patent filing process. Now, this is very important because this will reduce the operational cost in India, and this will give some impetus to the industry to come to India, because they will accept the fact that their technology will not have any copyright issues in India.
Prasanti, why has India failed to produce tech giants like Google, Apple, Amazon, etc., like they have done in the Western countries?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons for this, and I would try to justify my answers with few of the reasons. The Indian education system is not very welcoming for someone who actually wants to try out new things. For this, I can cite an example. Say a child who is very good in coding, and is only good at coding. He is not very good at other subjects like social studies or literature or arts. He might succeed in countries like US, but he will never succeed in countries like India, because forget about succeeding, he would rather be a failure because of the bad comments that he would get from the teachers, his parents, or maybe relatives. So Indian education system should be very welcoming when people want to try out new stuff. Secondly, coming to the Indian technological culture also, that is also not very welcoming. Say an entrepreneur who wants to try out his new venture, he is also not welcomed. He has to struggle a lot, and sometimes it so happens that he might as well leave the work is taken up in the between because of the frustration that he has to face. So, and the engineering culture, mostly normally we see that engineers do not stay engineers for quite a long time in India. Maybe after 2-3 years of their jobs, they tend to change their field by pursuing an MBA, going for an MBA, and people who stay in the engineering field also, they tend to go to countries like US and UK to pursue MS, and they work for companies like Microsoft and Amazon, but they normally do not do much for countries like for our country, or they do not work for India, or they do not try to start something of their own. There's a few other reasons, like we do not have proper infrastructure, we do not have a good regulatory board, we do not have a good governance to do all these things. But we can definitely succeed if we can understand that this is the requirement, and if we can find out, if we can channelize our solutions, we can definitely achieve this.
How can India become a developed nation? And where are we lagging now?
In my opinion, the government should invest a lot in world-class facilities. And from the term world-class, I mean is that we should not spend in anything below the best. So be it in education, be it in the field of science and technology, be it in the field of research and development, be it urban and rural planning, be it roads, be it airports, be it security, we should spend in anything that is the best. And we should also focus on other factors, like we should get entrepreneurs involved, we should ask women to join the workforce, we should make every child go to schools, we should increase the number of police stations, the number of police personnel, the number of judges, so that the legal system is also set right in India. We should invest a lot in the research and development, we should invest in science and technology, so that people are more encouraged, the youth is more encouraged to participate and not leave the country and work for other countries, and stay in India, work for India, work with India, and for the betterment of our
How
country.
has the research culture in India affected the researchers? And what can be done to improve it?
The research culture in India revolves around the fact that researchers need to publish their papers in international journals. That is the first point. Second point is that these journals are actually based out of universities and institutions in US and Europe, because of which they are prestigious, they are few in number, and also they have a large readership. When the committee of these journals actually receives a paper, they look at it with a perspective that will this paper be read by their readership, and then decide whether to publish it or not. In this process, to get it accepted in the journal, researchers back home in India not just waste resources, they actually use up so much time which can actually be spent in doing something very important for their next research, or something that will be actually used at the grassroots level. And the next problem in Asian universities is the fact that there is a subordinate and manager kind of a relationship between professors or researchers themselves. So even if there is a good idea coming from a junior researcher, it is actually not taken up and credit doesn't go to them. So these are the few problems which actually delay the process of research in our country.
As you said, that public must be engaged in the research culture. Why do you think so? And how can this be improved?
Why do we need to engage with the society? That is because we will get relevant data from them. The first reason would be that we can transmit the data that we actually have, or the knowledge that we have gathered through our research and the studies that we have done. So this will help them actually understand what is happening and then improve their lives through the technology or science that we have developed. And this can be done through a lot of variety of outputs, like films, or by discussions, or by talks, by presentations. So this way they will all be aware of what is happening around them. Second reason would be that we will also gain data from them, understand what their needs are, understand what kind of difficulties they are facing every day. This will also help us in our research. This can be actually done through focus group discussions, through talking to them, personal interviews, group discussions, and we can gain knowledge from them throughout. The third reason and the way that we can do this is by collaborating with them, making sure that we gauge and engage with a lot of audience. In Oxford University, for example, they had done a research where they actually went to Africa, they engaged with the society and people over there and helped them understand what child abuse is. So this way they were able to even gain knowledge from them as to what kind of situation they face, and also be able to give them feedback or the knowledge that we have about this particular matter. Such discussions and such research doesn't happen in India, and it's not given credibility even if it does, because our laws state that we have to make sure that they come into international journals or they are published there, and only then they are given credibility, which should not be the case. That is why we really need to engage and make sure that everybody is on the same level when it comes to science and technology.
So today we had a very fruitful discussion on the state of research and development and the technology in India. We discussed on a range of topics, starting from the research and development in the country, the investment required and the investment done in the country till now, the issue of the collaboration between private and public players in the research and development area, the state of education and what is need to be done in the education area to focus on the increase in research and development in the country. Hence, we had a very fruitful discussion and we'd like to conclude the discussion till now.